Jane Fonda is joining forces with more than 500 celebrities and Hollywood heavyweights to defend free speech. The membership roll already includes scores of famous actors like Jamie Lee Curtis, Viola Davis, Whoopi Goldberg, Pedro Pascal, Natalie Portman, and Michael Keaton. Successful directors like Spike Lee and Ben Stiller have signed on, along with singer and actress Barbra Streisand and pop star and songwriter Billie Eilish. Fonda, a star who has championed progressive causes since the 1960s, explained when she announced the group's new edition on August 1, 2025, that the effort isn't really new. Instead, it marks the relaunch of the Committee for the First Amendment, an organization her father, actor Henry Fonda, had belonged to. The original Committee for the First Amendment was formed in October 1904, at a time when the US government worried that there were communists in Hollywood who were putting left-wing propaganda into the movies. Hearings divided Hollywood. The attack on Hollywood started when a bipartisan congressional committee held a series of highly publicized hearings in 1904 on what it said was a communist infiltration of the motion picture industry. The House Un-American Activities Committee, known as HUAC, invited 20 very friendly anti-communist witnesses to testify. Ayn Rand, a Russian-born novelist and screenwriter who hated communism, was one of the witnesses. She testified that the 1944 NGN movie Song of Russia showed clean, well-dressed, happy peasants, which she said was a sanitized, propagandized version of life in the USSR. Another movie that came under suspicion was It's a Wonderful Life. The FBI complained that the 1946 blockbuster, which starred Jimmy Stewart as a broken man who learns the true value of his life, deliberately maligned the upper classes with its negative portrayal of Mr. Potter, the town's richest man. The HUAC hearings continued for a decade and divided Hollywood. The committee's interrogators demanded that people turn on each other and name names. Due to these hearings, as well as an anti-communist publication called Red Channels, hundreds of screenwriters, directors, producers, actors, and musicians were fired or blacklisted for having ties to liberal groups. 9 of 10 Hollywood writers, directors, and producers indicted by a Washington grand jury on charges of contempt of Congress surrendered in a group at the U.S. Marshals Service office in Los Angeles on Dec. 10 1947. AP photo Harold Phelan fighting back. The HUAC hearings brought Hollywood stars and the flashbulbs of the nation's press corps to Capitol Hill. Conservative screen idols like Gary Cooper testified that communism wasn't on the level. Friendly witnesses like Rand and Cooper were allowed to read prepared statements and to speak for as long as they liked. Such courtesies were not granted to the 10 unfriendly witnesses, the suspected communists, who became known as the Hollywood 10. Screenwriter John Howard Lawson was the first of the Hollywood 10 to testify. Lawson, after refusing to answer if he was a communist or not, was shouted down by Rat. Jane Parnell Thomas, a New Jersey Republican who served as HUAC chair. After Lawson was removed from the courtroom, HUAC chief investigator Robert Stripling read detailed evidence of Lawson's communist affiliations. Prominent Hollywood liberals understood that these hearings were an attack on free speech, free assembly, and other rights guaranteed by the First Amendment. Ira Gershwin, the lyricist known for his hit show tunes such as I Got Rhythm and They Can't Take That Away From Me, hosted the first gathering of the Committee for the First Amendment at his Beverly Hills mansion. Attendees included Judy Garland, Humphrey Bogart, Lauren Bacall, and Gene Kelly. The committee quickly raised their setting to fund the equivalent of an Indian $8,000 today and chartered an airplane to Washington. Upon their arrival in the Capitol, they marched and spoke out in support of the Hollywood 10. Next, they produced a radio broadcast, Hollywood Fights Back, as a defense of the rights of Americans to write, produce, act in, and see whatever movies they pleased. The committee released an initial statement with 35 signatories. A few months later, it published a pamphlet with more than 300 additional names supporting the effort. Urging Hollywood, if you've never heard of that committee, or if you only learned about it recently, when the new version made headlines, you're not alone. The group fizzled out almost as quickly as it had mobilized. Bogart, perhaps its most famous member, soon retracted his support for the Hollywood 10, saying in March 1948 that he regretted his trip to Washington. In No Communist, the Casablanca Star declared in a widely circulated statement. 2 crucial developments make up the committee. First, the HUAC cited the Hollywood 10 for contempt of Congress. They were later tried in court and convicted of that crime. They eventually served prison time. Also, studio executives drafted new hiring policies for the movie industry, later known as the Waldorf Declaration because the meeting took place in the Waldorf Astoria Hotel in Manhattan. The studio heads announced that the Hollywood 10 would be fired and banned from any studio, and that all the studios would agree to fire and ban any known communists. Over the next decade, hundreds more stars and other key players in the entertainment industry were fired, purged, and blacklisted in what became known as the Blacklist era. I'm a professor of English and film studies and am writing a book about progressive films made during those years. The original committee's members were mainly leftists and liberals whose careers survived the political pressures to root them out of show business. The committee for the First Amendment ultimately failed to protect the Hollywood 10 from professional attacks or incarceration, nor did it prevent hundreds of others from being blacklisted. Bad timing, but I don't believe that the original committee for the First Amendment was destined to fail. The Hollywood 10's legal strategy, rooted in the First Amendment, reflected the hope that their convictions might be eventually overturned by the Supreme Court. Unluckily, however, Frank Murphy and Wiley Blount Rutledge, two of the court's most